Many documentaries have come and gone. We've gotten some incredible ones as of late, such as Prehistoric Planet. However, those of us born between 1999 and 2005 will remember some classics. 2003 is the best year, by the way. You'd remember classics such as Prehistoric Park, When Dinosaurs Roamed America, Trilogy of Life, Sea Monsters, etc, etc. But without a shadow of a doubt, the most memorable one to this day, despite currently having a fair amount of inaccuracies due to updated information, is the Walking With series. You know what, I take that back. Some of the inaccuracies are pretty noticeable, but there are also some creatures in the trilogy that still hold up to this day. And even with the flaws in some, I mean, can you really blame them? Most of the information given to us was what was available at the time. But this wasn't any normal documentary, or documentary series I should say. They somehow tell a story with each episode and manage to make some of the characters the main point without actually turning them into plot armor-ridden movie props, if you get what I'm saying. And some even have names. The most famous of the set was Walking With Dinosaurs. The sequel Walking With Monsters and Beasts were great, but you just can't be the OG of OGs. This new Walking With Dinosaurs is... yeah, it doesn't compare to any of the three. There are many things that died in Walking With Dinosaurs. As a matter of fact, in every episode something died. So you would not expect to get too attached or feel any sort of way when a random dinosaur animal dies, but you couldn't be any more wrong. Some of the deaths in this series honestly broke little X-Rat Stuff's heart when he was younger. And the weirdest thing that I've noticed is that it's usually a specimen that was at the top at first and then lost their lives in a truly unfair circumstance. So in today's video I'm going to be listing the most tragic death in Walking With Dinosaurs, well, deaths. From being the king of the skies to another statistic because he couldn't get any play, and yeah, you heard that correctly. All the way from ruling the planet as the strongest thing to ever exist, to them becoming scraps for the ones you saw as low life forms. Real quick, if you enjoy these sort of videos, consider hitting that subscribe button and leave a like. There's also going to be a Discord in the description and a pinned comment because you guys keep asking me where it is and I keep saying the description and you still ask me where it is, so yeah, it's going to be pinned. I think it's only fair I start off the list with the very first episode of Walking With Dinosaurs, the very first glimpse of peak our young minds would witness. This episode takes place 220 million years ago in the Triassic, a time when dinosaurs are starting to secure some amount of dominance but are still far from the top of the pecking order. Although not shown in the documentary, there were giant saurosuchians that roamed about, and one of them was the largest non-theropod predator to ever exist on the planet, or walk on it I should say. Not to mention the giant ichthyosaurs that rivaled the blue whale in terms of size. But since it's Walking With Dinosaurs, we of course would be introduced to some of the more established, well, dinosaurs. And I'm sure all of you know it was the Liopleurodon, a lightly built active predator that was made for speed and agility. The model for this, to be honest, is not too bad, needs some possible feathering and a less fully upright stance like a stork most of the time. These guys truly were everywhere in the documentaries though. Hundreds would be in a single place, sometimes due to climatic conditions. And of course the adorable Trinadaxodon, or at least that's what they're called now today. And the one-ton Placerias, the last members of a now extinct group. Now members of each species died at some point or another, but by far the most tragic was what was supposed to be the villain per se, even though it was just an animal wanting something to eat. You already know she was going to be here, the female Postosuchus. I'm just going to call her Amber though. Is it her official name? No, but I'ma just say that. At 6 meters long and over 350 kilograms, she was a force to be reckoned with, and is possibly the most accurate creature model in the episode. Only thing that possibly changed is the hind legs being a bit more pronounced, and the front legs being shorter, since most research suggests it was a biped most of the time, but others do contest this, and possibly ease down on the almost crocodile-like osteoderms to an extent. Amber was a powerhouse. Minutes into her screen time, she absolutely dominated a Placerias and killed it with relative ease, and not even her own kind would dare contest her. As for the Liopleurodon, they wouldn't even dare look in her direction. However, with the dry season being so bad during that time in the episode, she likely got a bit too desperate and jumped the attack too early, causing her to get injured with a Placerias tusk on her thigh, with a slight limp and raging infection soon to come. Her life would soon go just way downhill. The Placerias don't run this time. Instead, they form a protective wall like a lot of big hurt animals today, and she even got ousted from her own territory from another Postosuchus because the injury prevented her from doing anything too extreme, and so she had to move on to find another territory with unfamiliar hunting grounds. And as time went on, a mixture of starvation, stress, and infection brought her to her knees, and the very things that would bolt for it if they even saw her now turned their attention to her as an easy meal. And the moment she collapsed, the Liopleurodon swarmed all over her. I don't even think she was dead immediately, possibly just passed out, so there's a high chance she was eaten alive, but at least she couldn't feel it, I hope. This sounds like a classic case of a predator dying because of prey-related injuries, which is true, but I don't know, something about her drooling and emaciated trying to cling on to life made me feel, you know, kinda sorry for her, but The next one on the list is definitely controversial, and is relatively short. The episode Cruel Sea brought about possibly the biggest controversy in the entire Walking With series, which was of course the blue whale sized Liopleurodon, the massive 150-ton bull that was 100 years old. I'm not gonna lie, when I was younger this was my favorite marine animal ever because of this. I used to take pride in knowing that this polka dot menace was the most powerful thing to ever exist, predator wise. So you could imagine how devastated I was to find out a few years later it wasn't nearly as massive. And the mix-up was because of a sauropod fossil, I think. Now it's about the size of an average orca. That's right, it was around 2 tons in the mid 2000s, but there are now papers suggesting a weight of 5 tons or even more. So take that, great white fans. Anyway, why is this guy's death sad? I mean, he himself caused a pretty traumatizing death himself. You know, when he bit a mother Ophthalmosaurus in half when she was trying to give birth, so it was technically a double kill. Not to mention him being the Grim Reaper of the oceans. You weren't even safe on land, as this yes respondless I butchered that had to find out the hard way. Not even his own kind was safe. He ripped a female's flipper because she was in his space, even though I think she just, wanted to mate. But I mean, he's pushing 100, so he's an old head and territory still means a lot. But the aura this guy had was unmatched. Imagine almost every living thing just darting the moment your presence is sensed. Now with this massive size there's no other animal that could challenge him, and you'd be right. So they had to make Mother Nature herself put him down. Imagine being so powerful the surfer itself wants to take you out. So powerful hurricanes and storms shook up the ocean, and this behemoth ended up on the beach, and he got beached. There's just something off about seeing something with so much power, basically helpless, while alive. Also they did mention his jaws could still crush anything that came in range. But like large marine animals today, mostly cetaceans, without a medium to support his bulk, he soon suffocated under his own weight, and ended up as food for the very things he once used to view as food himself. Yeah, this one was kinda more disappointing than anything to me as a kid. I just wanted to see him survive at the end credits, to be honest. 100 years of wisdom and experience just to get put down by forces outside of your control. Tragic. But I don't think it's nearly as unfortunate as the Ornithocheirus death. Now this was another animal that was mislabeled and oversized due to lack of fossil material. It was given a massive 12-meter wingspan, which is more attributed to things like the largest Astarchids. The Ornithocheirus has a wingspan just under 20 feet I think, which is still big, but most suggest the species walking with dinosaurs represented in the episode was Tropiognathus, which is very closely related, but has an 8-meter wingspan, so quite the upgrade. For the sake of simplicity, I'll be calling it what it was described in the documentaries though. So, Ornithocheirus. He was introduced like Darth Vader, a massive figure hovering above the peasants in comparison, Tapijara, who were, going nuts over mating. But when our boy landed, turns out that his biological clock was also telling him it's time to, go make some kids of his own, and then go get the milk. But there was one problem. Unlike the Tapijara, he would have to basically travel across the world to Europe in order to reach the breeding grounds. And everything was going all fine and dandy until he had to cancel Quartway because of some storms that made it impossible to fly. So he's now at a disadvantage. He already basically flew a marathon, even with him mostly riding currents like albatross today. It still requires a good amount of energy for something that weighed over 100 kilograms in the show. So not only does he have a delay, but he's also partially drenched with basically giant ticks in him. Being wet and being sucked dry by parasites has to be the worst combo yet. I've been bitten by ticks before after tumbling into a bush trying to get some information for a lab report when we went into the Amazon 2 years ago. And I didn't realize ticks were on my back until 2 days later when I came back home. It's like a hard pimple in your back that stings. And dear heavens, taking them off was a nightmare. Thankfully in that region ticks didn't have Lyme disease, apparently, so I was fine. Did I get it checked? No, I didn't get any symptoms, but I'm hoping. Anyway, back to the Sky King. The storm eventually let up and he took back to the skies. The urge to mate so strong that he snatches fish on the way, while trying not to get caught himself by some sort of massive pliosaur in the Middle Cretaceous, which I don't know what it could be. Gotta look that up. He finally does manage to make it to Western Europe at least, so he's nearly there, but at a cost. He was still tired after all that distance, and before he could rest for too long, the early birds chased him off. And this is so real. You ever been chased by a pair of kingfishers before? The tree in our yard had a nest, and I used to hang around the tree a lot, only to almost lose my eye to the parents, so a mini swarm of birds of any kind would repel most things if they're trying to get you to move.
The giant turns bully.
During this time we also get the infamous bald Utahraptors with broken hands. The pattern isn't something I could hate on though, it's one of my favorites. However, the Ornithocheirus didn't have time to focus on that, even though he was a target himself. His instincts were pushing him on despite his condition, and after some time he finally reached the breeding grounds. However, none of the other males respected their elders, and so he was chased off over and over again. The spots he would once get without any problem are now off limits due to younger and stronger males. So yeah, he was banished to the outskirts. This was basically foreshadowing for that one toppy jar that faced the same thing in the beginning. Imagine once being the strongest thing to take flight, well, in the documentary, and then suddenly being put to the side and watching other males live what's supposed to be your purpose. The extreme heat and exhaustion soon wore him down. Remember, this guy flew 14,000 kilometers, which is outrageous, and in the scorching sun and lack of water, he soon started to whittle away. It broke my heart seeing tears come from his eyes. But what hit the hardest was the phrase, "The king of the skies has lost his majesty." That one honestly stung, and yes, I know he wasn't actually crying, it was just the condition he was in. But damn, what's worse is that you see the process of him dying, him trying to walk away with all of his power just to fall along and shake to try and get back up, and in the end, he lay there lifeless, with many others who didn't make it. But if there's one good thing I could say, is that he died relatively old for his species, I assume at 45 or more, since he first mated at this beach 40 years ago, and has likely sired many offspring, so his legacy is still there. And hey, he provided food for the next generation, and I'm not trying to take away from the tragedy, but bro died for a chance to get freaky, let's be real. There is no jokes when it comes to the last animal on the list here though, and it's without a doubt the saddest death, at least to me. The BBC solo documentary Big Al introduced us to the life of one particular character mostly throughout the entire film, Big Al, whose story would make a Victorian executioner shed a tear. For those who don't know, Big Al is an actual Allosaurus specimen today, a subadult who suffered many injuries, broken ribs, torn arm and more, except it was a toe infection that ultimately killed him. With these injuries, BBC painted a vivid picture on what his life could have actually been like. The first scenes of his life were pretty good, not gonna lie, well, for dinosaur standards. His mom basically acted like crocodiles today and digged him and his siblings out and led him to somewhere more safe, but not safe enough, as Big Al watched one of his clones get slimed right in front of his very eyes by what would be him basically in a few years. So sometime later, Big Al finally reached like 3 meters long and is now trying to learn the ropes on how to effectively hunt, in which he's doing fairly well, even though he failed most of the time, and he'd gained some valuable lessons that not even fully grown Allosaurus could learn, or even know, since a massive female got stuck in a mud trap for a Stegosaurus carcass, even though she saw another Allosaur that's basically half dead already there. So Big Al basically took notes and dipped. Some more years go on and he becomes a sauropod hunter, well, a wannabe one, because it required a large group to wear down an already sick Diplodocus, which sent him on the floor, but he somehow didn't sustain any serious damage. In the end, he basically ends up getting meat for days when the massive animal died from exhaustion, while also trying not to get off by a big female. Little did he know that would be the same thing he'd seek out very soon, and so it began. He wasn't fully grown but not too far off. His crests are coming out and flushing red. It's basically an old teenager whose hormones are raging and he seeks out a female, who is decently bigger. She's probably a cougar in comparison to him, but when they meet she is not interested, and so this is where the problem begins. Like every incel or nice guy, he simply couldn't take no for an answer and kept on pressing, something which he would deeply regret, since that big girl slammed him onto the floor, not in a good way, smashed his ribs and tore his arm, but he somehow got away without having his throat torn out, and so he learned that no means no, and miraculously he survived this for a few more years and his ribs healed, but his hands still didn't function properly. It was now the dry season and food was somewhat thin, so he decided to hunt down some swift moving prey, which went horribly. One of his targets knocked over a dead tree, which Big Al tripped on and broke his toe. Reminded me of when I saw my friend try to jump over a concrete gutter when running and his toe caught the edge and he fell dead on his face. He was all good in 2 weeks, but my boy, was there a lot of blood. The broken toe itself wasn't what killed him though, it's what came about with it. And if you're a carnivore in such a competitive environment like the late Jurassic, you're basically dead. And so he laid in a dried up riverbed, probably reminiscent of all his years or maybe what he could have become, and he passed on there, where the first thing that saw him was another baby Allosaurus that was looking at the harsh reality of the predator's life. Considering what Big Al survived throughout his years, I'd say he's definitely a strong animal. If he'd gotten the chance to reproduce, his offspring definitely would have been survivors. But it wasn't confirmed if he never got to mate or not after the experience with Big Bertha. I think this one was the saddest one because it literally was, you know, the life story of everything Big Al went through, while the others didn't get that much attention. I'd like to give an honorable mention to the mother Tyrannosaur though. She charged an Ankylosaurus head on to protect her kids, which is something she'd never do and paid dearly for it. A broken hip and eternal bleeding meant a slow and painful death. Like after she got hit, it did not even register what just happened. she just limped off in one direction and died. But let me know what are the saddest deaths in your opinion, and what you think could top any on the list. But that's all for now folks, I'll see you later.